Well, hello there, gunfighters. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting, being a warrior, protecting, providing for those around you. That includes hunting and gun-related subject matter. Welcome to the podcast. Hopefully, keeping God at the center in everything. This podcast is no different with biblical Judeo-Christian values. I'm blessed to have real-world first-hand experience. Bio bullet points in the show notes. Military, combat veteran, law enforcement, lifelong hunter, guide, private security contractor, etc. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to do a good old-fashioned gear review. And it's been a while since we've done these. I don't want to do these too often for a couple of reasons. One, I think gun culture has steered way too heavily towards gear. Always the latest, greatest. You gotta have this thing, you gotta have that thing. Oh, the FOMO. We had a name for these guys in the military. We called them gear queers. I don't want to be one of those guys. I also realize that you need stuff. So I try and balance it. And I will say, you shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous, says the Lord God Almighty. I take no sponsors on this show. I refuse sponsors. Yeah, maybe that means I have to work 2 jobs and I'm not getting sent a bunch of free stuff. I'm okay with that. I'd rather work for my money and have integrity. Get bought and paid for shill. So this stuff is stuff I'm not being pressured one way or another to tell you about. And I think that's important. I think, sadly, a lot of our gun culture, the gun tube glitterati, is getting paid to just push you stuff that you may or may not need. But again, it has been a while, so I try and balance that. Recently, I've been struck by this. I bought a bunch of gun magazines from the 1950s, some from the 80s. And you look back at the old 1950s, like American Rifleman's, and there is gear stuff in there. There are ads in there, but a lot of those articles are about shooting and how to be good at shooting and competition shooting and winners and things like that. And it seems like today, I even did a picture for the patrons. Old magazine covers versus the new ones. The new one's just gear. Look at this fancy new thing. You should have it. It's so cool. The old one is like people out getting dirty, training, gunfighting, hunting. It's like people doing the things. Now it's just like, look at this cool gear. This gear is cool. Ergo, if you get it, you'll be cool too. Ugh. Anyway, I don't think that we do too much of that here. Again, you do need some gear. To be a gunfighter, one must have a gun and ammo and some gear. So that's what we're going to talk about. Long-winded intro. Let's get into it. Sig Romeo 1 Pro. It's a good optic. I got one of these because it came on the ZevTech Sig 226 single action only. It's next to me right now. One of my go-to carry guns. I got it thinking, I'll run it. I might replace it, but it came with the gun that I wanted. It came mounted on there. I've run it for a while now, and I'm actually really impressed with it. It's a fantastic optic. The Pro, I think, means that it just has bigger glass, and this is a fast optic. I polished off my season this year shooting Steel Challenge, and I appreciate the larger view of a bigger optic. That's fantastic. It's also got really intuitive, easy-to-use controls. One gripe that I have with it is it needs really small screwdriver, smaller than you're likely to have on you, like on a multi-tool or on a Victorinox Classic that you keep in your pocket. So you're going to need a very small, petite flathead screwdriver to adjust it. I've seen worse, but that's my one little gripe with it. But it's got a decent low profile. You can co-witness with regular height iron sights with it milled into this slide. I'm not known for babying my stuff, and this thing is held up. And Romeo 1 Pro, this has a 6 MOA dot. It's got a big dot, which I thought I wouldn't like, but unlike a lot of the smaller dots I'm accustomed to, this is like a crisp dot. You know how a lot of times you get a dot and it's like a starburst and it doesn't have a real defined edge? What's fantastic about this optic is when you look at it, it has a very distinct outline. Now you can turn it up too bright and get it to be blurry, but it's got a very distinct circle. So if you want, you can use it just like an iron sight and aim with the top of the circle like you would aim with the top of an iron sight. The fact that it's 3 MOA or 6 MOA doesn't really matter. It's a fantastic optic. Highly impressed with it so far. I also really appreciate that it has really beefy mounting screws. As somebody that's seen screws come loose before in pistol optics, it's got some beefy screws. I like that. I liked it so much that I got another one. I wanted a similar optic on the Beretta 92 that you guys voted on Patreon to test against the SIG 226, single action only versus single action only. However, Beretta has not had any of those plates in stock, so it's just been sitting in a box. But this fact that I bought a second one, I'll tell you how much I like it. Now, a third one for another SIG 226 that I have that I set up for Steel Challenge is very similar. The SIG Romeo RS Pro Reinforced Steel. It's actually polymer with steel inserts. You might think plastic, but I mean, I'm not a Glock guy, but I'm not going to deny that Glocks are tough. They're made of plastic. This optic, I actually got it because it's light, and I wanted a less reciprocating mass because, again, Steel Challenge, drag racing with a handgun. To go real fast, lighter weight on the slide is not going to hurt you. It's only going to help you. Got a cutout slide to reduce weight, and I got a light optic to reduce weight with still a large optic window. It's a good optic. The SIG Romeo RS. It's similar to the Romeo 1 Pro, except it's polymer. Can't imagine it's any weaker than the aluminum one. And it's been pretty rugged and robust so far. My one gripe with this one is the adjustment screws are even worse in that you need a teeny tiny little Torx bit, the little star bit. That's so tiny, who knows what number it even is. It's crazy small. Don't like the Torx bits generally because it's a specialty tool. I prefer a flathead. I prefer like a normal size flathead. This is even worse than the regular Romeo. But other than that, it's a good rugged optic. If you're not changing loads or changing guns very often, you're just going to get it sighted in and not worry about it, not that big a deal. But the adjustment is the one thing I don't like. But other than that, rugged, lightweight, good carry optic. I am impressed with it thus far. Let's go from new school to old school. How about some old school peep sights? I have been shooting civilian marksmanship program, CMP service rifle competitions. A lot of times when I'm practicing, I practice the fundamentals with a 22. One of the 22s I practice with quite a bit is my Ruger 1022 that I've been blessed to have and hang on to since I was a boy. I still train with it all the time. Wish I could remember how old I was when I got that gun. I can't remember. That's how long ago it's been. Still going strong. Anyway, I have it configured, getting back to the iron sights, with a Williams peep sight with a rail. Now, I was familiar with the Williams peep sights. I had an older version that didn't have the rail. It had a peep sight on the rear. But this one is the Williams peep sight for the 1022 with the rail and the sight on the back. So, you can run the really good, really precise aperture peep sight, and since you have a standard rail on top, you can run a scope on top of it with QD rings, which I have. I can practice with irons, I can practice with an optic, and it's easy. The Williams sights are very good. They're very affordable. They are not the most rugged. I'm not concerned with it on this rifle because when I have the optic mounted, it protects the rear sight. But they are a little bit more fragile than I would like for like a go-to hardcore survival 22, if there is such a thing. For that, I prefer tech sights, of which I am also familiar with and have quite a bit of experience with. The tech sights are more like a military-style, rugged 1903 Springfield, M16A2, M14 style sight. They are rugged. They are way overbuilt for a 22. So if it's going to be your go-to survival 22, I'd recommend tech sights if you're just purely going irons. However, if you want a really good, precise, good for all-around use in a 22, aside from crazy overbuilt and rugged, the Williams sights are nice, and they're nice that they have that standard rail option now. Little tactical tip I'll throw in the middle here, you might want to do with that front sight they provide is break off the fiber optic on the top. If you're going for really precise shooting with irons, that fiber optic's just too big for, like, if you're trying to hit a target with a 22 out of 200 yards just for fun. Really precise shooting groups, if you take a pair of pliers or something and snap off and then file down so it's a flat square front sight like you would use in the military on, let's say, an M16, A2, or A4, a much more precise sighting apparatus. If you want speed, leave the fiber optic. If you want precision, maybe break that off and file it down, and you get a really precise sight picture with said sights. Since we're on the topic of 22s, a really good option, especially if you don't want to tinker with a bunch of stuff, for the Ruger 1022 is their Ruger BX upgraded trigger. These are fantastic. They are they're not the best, but they're super simple to drop in. They're pretty affordable. I hesitate on a lot of the stuff that mention prices because with inflation the way that it is, who knows what the prices will be when you check. But compared to a lot of other things, the Ruger BX triggers, if you want to drop in 1022 trigger, just like a good, decent, serviceable trigger to drop in, that Ruger BX trigger is pretty good. Also good are the VeteranCorporate kits. Now this requires a lot more, let's say, mechanical savvy on your part. You might get frustrated, but once you get it in, they're pretty decent. I have had issues in the past where I install it and the safety no longer works. May have to finagle that safety and the trigger kit. Also on VeteranCorporate and Ruger, make a really good kit for the Ruger Mark IV. It's a phenomenal kit. It's a very light trigger, so be careful. Consider it like a marksmanship principles and competition trigger, not like an all-around trigger. I think it's honestly too light for that. But you talk about a wonderful trigger, as close to a 1911 trigger as you can get without being a 1911. But that Ruger VeteranCorporate Mark Series trigger for their Mark IVs, and I'm sure they have other ones for the earlier generations, those are very good as well. How about a bag? Midway USA. Again, not a sponsor, but I've been using them a long, long time. They have their own brand of what I would call a bailout bag. They may call it something else. Kind of like a satchel, a tactical European carry-all. And it comes with a kit to put a bunch of mags in and other pouches for things like tourniquets and things that you might want in a bailout bag. They're not expensive. It's a good go-to if like your truck gun is an AR-15. You want a good like modern Minuteman sling bag. You throw your AR in there. You throw this kit in there with some mags, maybe a bore snake, some tourniquets, spare batteries, but keep it limited. It's a bailout bag, not a bug out bag, but it's a good bag for that. Midway USA sling bag for an AR. Let me talk about some scope mounts. They impress me so much. I guess got to talk about them. They're the Sig Sauer Buckmaster aluminum scope rings. They are crazy rugged and durable. Not uncommon for me to bust a mount or for I have to have a mount come loose. And I use some really good premium mounts. These are as good as many of those others, and they're very affordable. Again, the Sig Sauer Buckmaster mounts. Sure you get the appropriate height for what you're doing, but just phenomenal. So much so that I bought another set to put on another rifle. And I have more expensive rings on it right now. But I think I'm more confident, as much as I've beat these things up, that they're going to hold zero. They're phenomenal rings, and they're not crazy expensive. If they were twice as much, I'd still say they were a good buy. So I'm talking about scope rings. How about a scope? Hilux. Now, Hilux is not a brand that I've used before, but when I was looking for scout rifle optics, there's not a lot to choose from. It's slim pickings out there. A Vortex that's crazy heavy. Made in China, don't like the reticle. The L.A.P.D, which I like, except for the reticle. A crazy workaround apparatus to mount a traditional scope, of which I tried and worked okay, but I wasn't crazy about. A Burris pistol scope, which I tried, but didn't like the reticle and didn't like the magnification. Which leads me to the Hilux. If you're not familiar, Hilux is a name that's been around for a while. I was reluctant to try an optic because I believe it is made in China. I'm not big on that, but I couldn't find a good American-made alternative, which is sad. But I read a bunch of reviews that said it was good, clear glass, good optic, and it had a reticle that I like. And it was the magnification that I wanted, 2:7. Now, a scout rifle, a Ruger scout rifle is one of the things, if you're familiar with podcasts, one of the things that I use when I'm reconnoitering. And I am scouting. It's a scout rifle. Not the best hunting rifle out there, not the best long-range rifle out there, not the best door-kicking rifle out there. It's a scout rifle. I use it a lot when I'm scouting. I was out with it this morning in the rain, trying to locate clothes with, and put a deer in the freezer. But this seemed like the best option. I've had it on there for a while. I've used it quite a bit, and it's a decent optic. I've gotten it wet several times. I haven't noticed any issues with it. It's got a 308 BDC reticle, which I like. It's in a 308, the rifle that I have it on. It just seems well thought out. And again, it would be great if they had an American-made option that was similar with a good reticle in a scout scope, but sadly, I can't find one. But so far on the Hilux, I'm impressed. How about something completely different? Kind of gun-related. If you like guns, you probably like blades and you probably like axes. Cold steel all-purpose axe. Doing work around the cabin, you might imagine that an axe comes in handy. I'm actually really pleased with this axe. The best wood splitting axe. If you're just going to be splitting cords of wood, you want something a little bit, I would want something a little bit heavier. For general purpose, splitting, limbing, good all around, fast handling, light axe. Cold steel all-purpose axe is decent. It wasn't crazy expensive. It's a good axe. How about some good old-fashioned jungle boots? I wear these for work. If you don't know my other job, private security contracting, for the feds. I won't get any more specific than that. But, jungle boots, combat boots, body armor, war belt, kind of my go-to work outfit. And I grew up in an era with jungle boots. When I joined the Marine Corps, we were still using the old woodland pattern. I think if I tallied it up right, I used 6 different patterns in my military career. But I am very familiar with jungle boots. These are Rothko jungle boots. They're not expensive. They're very, very good. I'm very impressed with them. I thought about getting some just for hunting boots in hot weather. They are phenomenal. I wear them on long, long shifts. I've worn them quite a while. They seem to be holding up well. They're decent. Used to be you could get really cheap, surplus jungle boots. I don't know if that's the case anymore. But if you can't find a surplus pair in your size in decent condition, these jungles are nice. I have the classic OD green and black, but if they make them in all black, they make them in desert tan. I mean, the desert ones are similar quality. They're going to be good boots, and they're not overly expensive. So if you're looking for a good jungle boot, new, I recommend these, the Rothko. These I'm going to mention, consider this your public service announcement, but the D-lead wipes. Escatec are the ones that I have, but you should have some D-lead wipes if you're a serious shooter. You don't always have access to a place you can wash your hands. If you can, wash your hands with warm, wash your hands after you shoot or handle ammunition or whatever, lead, mercury primers, with cold soapy water. And then if you want to kill germs and stuff, warm soapy water, but cold water because it doesn't allow the chemicals to get into your pores. So cold soapy water. But if you can't wash your hands properly, you don't have a creek nearby, anything like that, in the desert, water is in short supply, D-lead wipes, they're a good handy thing to have. I have, by God's grace, been a gunfighter, competition shooter, hunter, all of my adult life. And I've had my lead levels tested, and they're fine. I'm pretty diligent about that. I know people that have had lead level issues. So, D-lead wipes. If you got a range bag of all the tactical stuff you have in there, it's not tactical as having lead poisoning. So maybe have some D-lead wipes in there. And not gum related at all, but just, I gotta throw this in there. I just put some on a quesadilla. We eat it all the time. We've used this particular one for quite a while, and it has not run out. And that's ghost pepper. If you like spicy stuff, and I love ghost pepper. And I like even better smoked ghost pepper. So good. Used to run the, my wife also really loves spicy. If we were planning on making some crazy spicy Thai tonight. Ghost pepper, reaper pepper, habanero, like we just love that stuff. Anyway, this is the Kiva Mark Wayne's smoked ghost pepper. A little bit goes a long way, and it is so good. Not expensive. You can find it on Amazon. Just crazy good. All right, and a couple of things I want to talk about optics-wise. CVLife. They're a budget optic. I know because it said on the box when I got it. It stands for Country Values. Country Values for Life. But I think this is a third optic. I could be misremembering that. I got one for a young girl that wanted to get into competition shooting. I think her dot sight was the CVLife. I did get a compact scope for a 22 CVLife. Very happy with it. And I recently, since Beretta apparently doesn't make or doesn't have, and I waited a long time and still couldn't get a 92 plate for a Delta Point Pro footprint, an RMR footprint, and the optic that I elected to get was a CVLife dot optic. This one's a CVLife Wolf Covert. It was a very cheap optic. I got it to run against a 226. I'm not saying that I would carry it for a defensive optic, but I was very impressed with it and have been impressed with it so far. Very affordable. Came with a pick rail mount, so even if I don't keep it on a pistol, I would have no problem with it on a 22. It's a good budget optic. It's got a good window. It seems clear. It seems crisp. It seems crazy good for the money. Again, I'm not saying go fight in a sandbox with it. I'm not saying go parachute into the middle of North Korea with it. But for a good all-around training optic, the CVLifes have been good so far. And the Monstrum stuff that I have used so far as mounting solutions go, they have been pretty good. Now, I'm going to talk about reloading for a while. I have quite a long history with reloading. Been blessed to reload off and on for a very long time. When I was living as a nomad, that was harder to do. Recently, I got back into it. Experience with quite a few reloading presses. If you want just a good budget option getting into it, get a Lee single stage anniversary kit. It's your best bang for the buck unless you find some great deal on Facebook Marketplace or something. But the Lee anniversary kit, that's a fantastic kit. Even if you think you want a progressive, don't learn on a progressive. Learn on a single stage. Consider this another tactical tip. Get a single stage. You're going to want one anyway, even if you have a progressive for load workup. However, I want to get a progressive later, but start with a single stage. Start with a single stage. Save yourself the frustration and throwing stuff across the room. My advice there, the Lee is the best bang for your buck, but I've recently been using a lineman. I got off Facebook Marketplace from a guy with a good deal. Now, you may be familiar with lineman if you're into like cast lead bullets, but if not, maybe not. Like, it's not a tactical name brand that gets thrown around a lot. Since mine is used, but I believe it's the same one that's still available, the Lyman Brass Smith Ideal C. Single stage reloading press. Crazy strong, crazy well built. I've also had experience and used RCBS in the past. Those are good too, but this Lyman really impressed me. And it's a kind of burnt orange color. I don't know if that's my favorite color. It's between that or olive drab. Olive drab's been one of my favorite colors since before I joined the Marine Corps, way pre 9/11. I've loved olive drab for a long time. But burnt orange is also a great color. So, just if you want your reloading bench to be visually appealing. Anyway, Lyman, single stage reloading press, it's great. It's been very strong. I've had stupidly tried to do things with that press it shouldn't be doing, and it's held up. It's a good press. I'm reloading quite a bit of 454 on it. Recently started reloading 30-06 on it. It's a good press. So, if you want the best bang for your buck, I'd say get the Lee. But if you want a really good quality one, the Lyman is very good. The RCBS is also very good. So much so, I think I have in my car, or have considered getting the Lyman turret reloading press. If you're familiar with turret presses, they can be a good in-between with as far as frustration goes, speed goes, between that and a progressive press. Lyman looks like they make a pretty decent turret press. Anyway. Is that enough gear talk for a while for you guys? Whatever gear you have, get out there and train with it. Use it. Your tactical verse of the day. You shall not charge interest to your brother. Interest on money or food or anything that is lent out at interest. You imagine, this is my commentary, could you imagine what a better world it would be if we all just obeyed the commands of God? Imagine what a house would cost, a car would cost, insurance would cost if you could not charge interest. What a wonderful world that would be. You shall not charge interest to your brother. Interest on money or food or anything that is lent out at interest. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.